in Dhanak, the song, which is all I'm saying is let's give love a chance. That's what I believe in. So in 2006 December, I stopped newspaper subscription and I switched off my cable. Back in the day, there was only cable TV. That's the number one recipe for happiness.
Wow. Nagesh Kukunoor is seen only in his movies. He has the gift of the gab. His movies are full of one-liners. But even in today's times where it's just easy to manufacture content, be it Twitter, Facebook, podcasts, he is still only seen in his movies. That's what I, as an avid fan of what he has to say, I hardly get to access anything. Why is that so? What makes you a rare talker?
Well, there is so many talkers in the world, so I'm like, let them do all the talking. I have no desire. But jokes apart, even back in the day when I was much more active, I used to do interviews, I used to be out there. I always had this aversion to when, people would ask me to come and talk at certain events and stuff like that. When there is a question and answer, I'm much more comfortable because you ask me a question and most of my answers are not like manufactured or carefully manipulated and presented. They're just the way I feel. But especially in this era of shameless self-promotion, I have almost kind of withdrawn from that space because I find it extremely sort of demeaning at times that everyone is just screaming for, check me out, listen to what I have to say. And I really don't feel that what I have to say or what 90% of what people have to say has any value. It's just noise that's out there. So I like to do a lot of my talking through the stuff I direct, the stuff I make. So a lot of my thoughts, ideas, philosophies come through that.
And there is another novel way of perhaps spreading your message, like you are surrounded by stars, you are surrounded by influencers in the true sense of the word, not instance. Yeah. So as you talk to them, perhaps your ideas are anyway reaching people through your conversations, informal discussions. Is that something you would rule out?
No. And why is that important? Even if it doesn't reach,
yeah,
so what? But what is so earth-shattering that has to come out of my mouth or my picture? But what is so amazing that people are obsessed with 24/7 self-promotion? I don't think there's anything interesting. I really don't. I'm much happier being incognito. And the irony is, in the last 5 years, I've done more work than I have in like a decade. And most of the times when people meet me on the street or, they recognize me and they come up to me and they say, you stop making films, you just stopped directing. Why? What happened? And it's ironic because I've been actively working, writing and directing for the last 5 years, but because I don't self-promote or you don't see me out there in the media, people think I just stopped.
So in a way, yeah, I mean, when now that we come to it, is this a sort of a deliberate, not a deliberate, is it very strategic also? Because now that movies come directly to the streaming platform, there is no reason to give time to promoting the film, so you can make more films.
See, early when I started in this business, what you did was there was always a press junket, or one was at the time of the release. A lot of times there was one when you were announcing the film. Then there was a week before the release of a film where all the people involved in the making of the film gave their time and they did the press. I understand how important the press is or how important the media is in getting the word out to the public, because I'm not making this content to watch it at home. I'm making this content so a large number of people get to view it. So I understand that. But now that 1 week has become the entire year.
Yeah.
That's the problem that I have. If I'm coming up for a release and then I say, okay, now let me tell you what I did with this film, who I worked with, how I wrote the script. All that is, I'll do it, and I did it for all my films. But I never understood how people just continuously do this 24/7. More power to them. Not mine, clearly not my cup of tea.
But why are you not on Twitter? Why are you not on Facebook? You've been humble about what's there, which I will say, which will be short, earth-shattering. But what you said, even in Hyderabad Blues, was earth-shattering at that time, and you made in Iqbal, whatever you said was earth-shattering, and then when you made Rockford, it was earth-shattering. So you say earth-shattering things, but beyond movies, why do they not come out?
That's kind of you to say. As a filmmaker, which includes both writing and directing, like I said, my thoughts, my philosophy, approach towards life, everything is reflected in a lot of the material I write, and I'm happy with what that does. But my aversion to social media is the fact that it's all consuming, and in the process of trying to satisfy the persona that you've created online, we all are genuinely losing our genuine selves.
It's so when I started talking to you on this camera, I had a different set of questions. Now I just feel that you've brought sort of such a big focus on what social media has become. It's made us addicted, it's made us useless. We scroll Facebook, Instagram, Twitter all day long. We don't realize that we've spent 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, and social media has become such a misuse of technology, and you've sort of refused to be a participant in this horrible game, in a sense.
100%, because I am a child of the previous era, right? The earlier generation, the iteration before the smartphone. And how were social interactions? And I'm not saying something that you don't already know, but how were interactions before? Okay, you wrote letters. Then it became a little bit easier with email. Oh, I can communicate with people, right? In every technology, in every innovation, there is always a high point, after which there are low points, right? So when the world did become a smaller place with emails and stuff like that, I remember when I first arrived at Georgia Tech 1988, I was like, oh, I can instantly write to my friends. I don't have to convey something like this. 2 weeks, I mail a letter, then they receive it, then they send their thoughts back. So that was good. But the moment it started altering me, and I was briefly on Twitter, and there was this constant pressure. I was constantly told by people that if you don't create a persona out there, you're going to vanish. And so there was this panic, this anxiety. So I need to create a persona. I need to tell them what I'm doing. Today I went to the gym, I worked out, today I ate this food. And then I took a step back and I said, but who am I killing? I'm killing a version of myself that I've created out there, not the true person. The true person hasn't gone anywhere. He's still interacting with the world, and I am okay if only 5 people know me, and those 5 people are my good close friends who interact one-on-one, and it's an enriching experience. I don't need 5 million people to know me.
Which is not possible in any case, that they know you. Nagesh, one question that arises is that films as a medium, how important is it right now with all of this? And another question that before I forget is, how can one make a great first film?
Okay, if I didn't think, first, why do I make films? It is arguably the most selfish thing that I do in the world. I do it because it gives me great, immense pleasure. It satisfies every creative aspect of my existence. I write, I direct, I'm in post-production, I sit on the music, I sit on the mixing, I sit on every small thing. So it's purely a selfish exercise. I make films because I love making films, and Very few of us are lucky enough to figure out those things in life. What makes us truly happy? This made me happy 25 years ago. It continues to do that even today. Nothing has changed. What comes with it? The benefits, the money, a little bit of the fame, all of those things, they're nice pluses, but they're not the reason that I got into the game. So the fact that I'm making films, I'm happy. Now, how important are films? Extremely important. Arguably, it is the most dominant art form of influencing a bunch of people very quickly. Books held that before, films took that over. But now, films are a distant second. Social media has trampled films. To get an idea, good or bad, across to the public via social media takes a drop of a hat. A film takes a year and a half. So social medias have nullified the importance of films. Sure, I can say as a filmmaker, films are still required because we need great stories to enrich in our lives, lose ourselves for 3 hours, which even those 3 hours, bloody people are on their phones. So I don't know what 3 hours we're talking about anymore. So their role has been diminished. There was a time when it was an extremely dominant art form. So I've always been careful about what I put in my films.
Is it also because great films are not being made? Like, let's say when you made Hyderabad Blues, when we used to watch Dil Chahta Hai, whatever, there was a time when we would hang on every word that was said in a film, that okay, this and then and this and that. And now when we see 7-8 years ago, if we said that movies are not being made of that quality, etc., it would sound okay, that we are just being whatever, it's just everybody says in every era. But now the way South Indian films have taken over, it does seem that Hindi movies are at least losing out. They are not saying the things which would make it important.
I disagree with that. I think the percentage of great films that are made in any period are the same. The percentage, let's say 1,000 films are made, X amount will be the great films. There'll be a bunch of good, it's the curve, right? And there'll be a bunch of average, there'll be a bunch which are terrible. So I think that percentage remains the same. However, in every industry, there is a period where large social changes are being made, where great films come out of. If you look at India post-independence, great films came because it was the demand of the era. Then if you look at the art house movement, your Mrinal Sen, Shyam Benegal, again great world cinema came out because it was the call of that era. So it happens, okay, every time. So this thing of whether good films are being made in Hindi or they're being made in Telugu, whatever, I think it's just a sign of the times, but the percentage of films remains the same. The problem now is there is an overkill. I myself, when I'm writing and doing something, I have to block this fact that there are 1,000 things made like what I'm about to make. And I have to say, no, you focus and you write and you make what you believe in. And don't worry about the rest, because just calibrate each year. You've gone from, let's say, 200 films that you might have to watch with to 2,000. Pretty soon that's going to be 20,000. So you tell me what good cinema, great cinema. It's very hard to break through anything now. There's too much. The reason those films are great, the reason why you remember the lines and stuff like that, is even in a best case scenario, if you went to the theater once a week, you saw 50 films. That's it. Now, you're watching 50 films in a week. If at all you end up watching anything completely without fast forwarding or being on your phone half of the film. So the whole paradigm has shifted. It's hard to say what's good, bad. There's too much.
But okay, still movie is a career rather than, let's say, making reels, putting out a Twitter note and stuff. So coming to the career point of view, as a what kind of a recipe or what pointers do you think are still timeless in terms of making your first film well?
The starting point for anything, and I'm not getting deep or philosophical, but this applies to anything in life, is a dogged belief that I will do it, I can do it, I want to do it. So there has to be that hardcore innate belief. I always said, when people would ask me, okay, what's the recipe, like you just said, for making a good film, I would say the 3 words that I borrowed from Nike before I made films: just do it. That's all. Because so many guys are, there's all the crap that you can give. Oh, you need to write a good story. First, have the belief ki, अरे मेरे को picture बनाना ही है. Back in the day, we couldn't just make a film because the only format for exhibition was 35mm or 16mm, which you had to blow up to 35 to show. Otherwise, you had this bad VHS or Betacam or whatever. So we didn't have format.
Choice, yeah.
Yeah. So they're very expensive to make a film back in the day. But that got erased over a decade ago when video cameras became so cheap. After video cameras, phones. Now you can shoot films on phones. So when people ask me what there is, it still is the same set of rules.
Coming to a very technical question over here, like, do you think a movie for the masses can be made in smaller cameras, like whatever, Sony FX6, 9? Predominantly we see Sony Venice or Arri Alexa being used for movies. So in your personal take, what do you think? Okay, if you are making it for mass consumption, what kind of production quality can we achieve with these smaller cameras?
Well, see, now you're talking about we're talking about the industry and what has happened. If back in the day, for me to get a release with a chota, badly shot film like Hyderabad Blues, not badly shot because the cinematographer was bad, but badly shot because I was discovering myself as a director. If you're talking about that reaching the screen and that was a huge journey. But now we have slowly, the market has pushed all of us into the tentpole film, the extravaganza film. So to answer your question, if you shoot it badly, it's not going to make it to the big screen. It's not. But you're talking about people making their first film. You're talking about people getting a start in the business. And the start all has the same set of rules. Can you tell a good story? So which means you need a good screenplay. Can you do your shot breakdowns well? Can you execute it well? Can you piece it together? The editing. So the rules remain the same. When we're talking about exhibition, which is another beast altogether, the rules change. Because you have gatekeepers. There are people who, distributors don't technically exist now. It's more the theatre chains. But you have to find out what are the big films that will reach the audience, what works, what. And eventually, you're going to say that only the big extravagant films will reach the audience, which is the truth. But you are discovering yourself as a filmmaker. You still need to follow those rules
and see how far it.
Yeah. And you might reach a producer who might say, oh my God, your film's really good. I'm going to hire you and I'm going to put 50 crores on your next film. Chal. That's where the game's at. When I made Hyderabad Blues, what was the end game? The end game was I would send it to film festivals. Someone would notice it. By a freak chance, some distributor might pick it up and release it. And I might have a career. Guess what happened? That's exactly what happened. That's what you do with the first film.
So theoretically, I mean, I remember one of your talks somewhere on television long ago. It stayed with me for some. I had no interest in movies or any such thing.
Right.
Just as a regular. You said that I intend to make movies for the white man, something like that. So
no, I never said that.
So anyway, now if that, I must not have said that. So now, if you make English films, like theoretically speaking,
yeah,
if you make 2 or 3 English films,
right,
one of them will probably find their way across the globe or something like that. Or do you think in those terms, like if you make a Hindi movie, there's a big budget, there's money for the crew, there's money for the cast. That's one way of doing a film. But let's say because you know how a little bit of English speaking audience thinks, and you've done it, you've lived there. And there's RRR now that has shown that okay, there's some appetite for Indian movies there. But have you considered making like an outrightly global film?
100%. I always said I always want to make films for an international audience, but never insulting the milieu I make it in. What do I mean by that? When Hyderabad Blues was made, Hyderabad Blues was clearly made for, loosely put, an international audience. because I'd been living out of India for about 10 years at that time. But when I shot the film, I was true to the Telugu families I dealt with. That's how they spoke. I was true to all the Hyderabadis who were in the film, because that's how the Hyderabadis spoke, which was a mixture of Hindi, English, Telugu, right? So I didn't make that film for a white or an international audience by having everyone speak in English, including the servants and stuff like that. The woman who played my mother spoke Telugu. She didn't speak any other language. She didn't speak English. Some of the friends spoke English. Some conversed in Dakhini, which is the language spoken in Hyderabad. So I am very true to the environment, to the milieu I set my film in. But the way I tell my stories, the way I want it to be international. That's what I meant. I still do that with every single film. The most recent one, which was very successful, was Dhanak. And Dhanak won more awards than any of my films did abroad. And Dhanak was set in Rajasthan, about a little village boy. It couldn't be more authentically Indian, but it reached it's a small film, so it reached a large audience as much as it can. But I did close to 40 or 50 film festivals, and like I said, won a bunch of awards. So that's what my game is.
So as a business, when you approach filmmaking as a business, Hyderabad Blues, if I remember correctly, all your rights were gone once you gave the film away. Later on in life, when you are making more and more films, where did you discover the most money, like a one-time fee as a director, or sharing satellite rights, sharing theatrical release? Or, I mean, what has been the recipe of making money out of it?
So in India, unless you actively bring in the money, the only money you make is the fees that you charge. So as a writer director, there's an X amount of fees. Now if I was actively producing, which I have done some of my films, then you bring in the money so you can get to share in the profits. Otherwise you can't. On paper people will give you all kinds of rights that will share 25% of the profits, 50%. You'll never see a dime. So the only thing, which is the advice I got from a lot of industry people here in India, if you are a writer director, quietly take your money upfront, because once the picture releases, even though if it's a monster hit, you won't see any money. So I stand by that rule, unless I'm actively producing.
So actively producing it, as in spending the money, getting the finance.
There are two aspects to production. One is the Western sense of production, which is by no means a small thing, which I do along with Ilahi Uktullah, who is my producing partner. She's done some films entirely for our company. Some I've jointly produced with her. That means, yes, the money comes from someone, but we do everything, and that everything is a lot of work. It's not just ki you write a check and the movie gets made by itself. It's both creative and it's marketing, it's business, it's everything. So there is that, and in some cases I've put in my own money. So then I become the full producer with all the rights and the ownership. So I've done both, and with mixed success. Some you make some money, some you lose some money, but that's the name of the game.
Like any other business, in a way.
Like any other business.
So, Nagesh, what do you think about if you had to give a roadmap to the industry? Okay, how can Mumbai film industry do better? What would be, suppose you're the captain of the ship of this beast called whatever, Mumbai filmmaking. A lot of discussion on where it lacks and writers' rights and all of these things. What do you think are the few changes you would want people to make, or how would you change the industry? And what would be your advice for the industry, let's say?
First, I always say, one of my favorite filmmakers are the Coen brothers, and I remember what Joel Coen said when they got the Oscar. He said, "Thank you for letting us play in our corner of the sandbox." The sandbox is where kids play. So he said, "Thank you for letting us play in our corner," and that's exactly what I am. I do not claim to know the industry in a larger sense. I've never done commercial cinema, so I don't think large numbers. I don't. I'm just very happy to play in my little corner. If there's one area where I'd say that the industry needs to give more respect to, it's the writer. The writing is the origin. Everything else follows. What you call, an actor can say yes and a film will get greenlit. Okay, instantly the film is on the floor. But who the bloody hell is
writing it enough to get him on board as well?
He can say yes and every day can come to the set. And if there's no one actually putting that thing together, there's nothing.
What will he shoot? What will he shoot?
What will he shoot? What will the director plan? So it's ironic. I get introduced everywhere as a director. Why? Because the perception is that the director is an important person. On a set, for sure, I am the captain of the ship. But why am I rarely referred to as a writer-director? Because the writer is not that important. लोगों को याद ही नहीं है. The writer part, हाँ, writer तो लिखता होगा. So that with the OTT space, the option for a lot more writers has happened. A lot more writers have been given the opportunity to exhibit their wares, but we still need to give the writer that darja, that importance of what he or she means to the entire process. I think that's something the industry should actively work towards.
Which could, at least, which could better the results for the industry overall?
100%. The quality changes. Like every field, more competition generates more people wanting to prove their talents, makes it better. If you pay $5, they'll be like, अरे writer बन के क्या मतलब यार? You'll have to just sit. Hero ने बोला कि 4 dialogue लिख दे तो तुमने लिख के दे दिया. वैसा नहीं. Writers create their stuff, the right environment, that's genesis of most of the material, and they need to be given that importance.
That's simple but truthful. I mean, whatever. It's the same thing repeating itself over and over again. It's still nowadays, the movies being made out of America, right? Like whatever, Parasite or Squid Games, they've been able to capture the imagination of the worldwide masses. What is the chance that one or two films from India can also be put alongside Parasite one day, or Squid Games one day?
So the consumption worldwide earlier fell into two categories. There was the prestige film and there was the commercial film. This is worldwide. Everyone followed that rules. So those set of rules. Like if you look at Parasite, since you mentioned it, Parasite clearly falls into that category of a prestige film. But if you look at the same director's body of work, he's done a horror film, he's done a couple of action films, he's a great director. So some people have the ability to straddle both stratas. Right now, RRR proved that, hey, maybe Indian commercial fare has a market there. Maybe it does. So that's opened a door which prior to last year didn't exist. The only way an Indian film could break onto the world stage, and it did a lot in the 60s with Ray. It did a lot with the art house filmmakers who came out of India. It did. So the prestige films went from India. And then once we moved past that movement and the government wasn't funding these films and everything fell into the same box of make commercial cinema that works at the box office. Not everything works. Once that happened, that died. Indian films 100% can find a global audience, but we need to make cinema for that global audience, and when we do, it'll find a market.
Oh, so we don't begin to, you don't see that many movies attempting to, or they're not being designed for.
Absolutely. They're not being designed for the international market. They're not being designed.
What would you, like, as somebody who could decide to design or something, what would inhibit you from trying that game? Like,
see, I have always straddled that. many of my films have been to festivals. Take someone like Kashyap. Kashyap's films have all played in festivals. So he does that, and he gets a theatrical release here as well. So there are filmmakers who do it, but there needs to be, and even when you say design a film, it's not like one day you sit and design and say, "Acha, theek hai, main ek art house film banata hu." It doesn't work like that. It needs a year and a half or two of love and a certain sense of belief. So it needs to come inherently. You can't just one day, just like if I one day decide, "Acha, my commercial film banaunga," I'll make some crap. There needs to be a belief, a certain strong sense of.
The idea should come. The idea comes first. It decides its own destiny,
and the ability should exist. Not just the idea. I mean, if I want to make quote unquote commercial cinema that does 600 crores, I should have the ability to do that. It's not that ki one day that I have to decide.
It can't be a goal that okay.
In 25 years, if I've been making a certain kind of film, I have a certain set of values. I can't just one day say, "Acha, my commercial cinema banaunga. Chalo." No, it doesn't work like that. I don't have that skill set. I will do what I truly believe in. This is the way I like to tell a story. This is that. Now with the OTT thing, lucky I've been able to stretch my wings a little bit more, experiment with bigger drama, experiment with different themes. I've been able to do that, and the OTT space has clearly allowed me to do that. But otherwise, most of us are given these small opportunities where we are able to push what we believe in, and that's that.
Even as we discussed the OTT space, it was I think a lot more open door. It was a very flourishing movement, so to say, in the pandemic time. And now as I hear from the last 1.5 years or 2 years, it's again very set, so to say, that people have created their place, established themselves,
right,
and others are not allowed. Like in the sense of, okay, now you come, we'll take your film for revenue sharing. There won't be any money in it, but okay. I mean, it doesn't. It's again a restricted outcome game now. Again, is it how you see it, or it allows us at least some outlet for somebody who can find a way in and negotiate a price, but
see, we're talking about two different things. One, we're talking about the kind of content that you want to get made, and the second is the price and everything. The price almost always is decided by the market, right? It's supply and demand. When the OTT space first entered, the platforms needed the material, so they're willing to pay any price. Now the platforms don't need the material. They're either generating the material, or they are in a position to negotiate harder. That's a business that you can't do anything about. Since the beginning of time, those cycles will happen, and depending on that, you land up either. The most important thing that's happened is, as the platforms have existed for 5 or 6 years, they're gathering a lot of metadata, and they start to realize what people watch. So the creativity now is getting compromised because they are finding, and again you can't blame them, they are finding that the audience that views them gravitates to certain kind of material.
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh, ये बहुत हटके है, इसमें viewership नहीं मिलेगा, leave it, come to this. So that's what we are seeing more and more of, as the space which was really this wide is slowly becoming narrower and narrow, and almost becoming to a certain extent glorified TV. That's what it's coming down to, and that is the truth. Again, the market decides it. Who are you going to point fingers at?
Yeah,
it's not like if there was money and the market said that, oh, let's say Mumbai city, the viewership is insane for art house, out of the box things. Tomorrow 10 OTT platforms will line up to make the material. But when you put a show out and you get 5 viewers per day, you're not going to do that. So the market decides it. There's nothing you can do.
A few words for, let's say, new investors and financiers who want to enter this business. Are there any safety nets for them? What is the advice that you would have?
No safety nets. This is the one business which has a zero safety net. I always tell people, I've been meeting with investors all my life, and my producing partner Eli always says, please you don't come to the meetings, because my first thing I'll tell them is, if you're entering this business, be prepared to lose all your money. Because that is the weird thing about, and I'm calling this filmmaking loosely, about the entertainment business, is if you're coming in to treat it purely as a business, then you should go to the purely commercial establishments, filmmakers, stuff like that. But if you're coming to people like me who buck the system, who try and do different things, then you are coming in knowing that this is a high risk business. It is a high risk business.
If it's a low cost, it's also a high risk.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So be informed. If it's just your passion driving, and I constantly meet people, investors who come and say, this passion project of mine, I want to do this passion project.
Now going back to, let us say, the investors that who have invested in these kind of films, so to say, whatever middle of the road films or low good ROI films,
right.
Over a period of 2, 3, 4 films, they always make money. What would you say?
The ones who are still around, it's clear that they've made money. The ones who are not around, they're like, bhai, tried it, but this is not my cup of tea, and they've left. It's as simple as that. See, the problem is making the film is only a fraction of the cost. Getting the film to reach the public is the cost. Even in today's times, you can make a great film for 5 CR, 3 CR. You can make great cinema for that kind of money. But in order for it to reach the public, you're talking about spending 2 to 3 times that sum, with the publicity, with the prints and everything. That's where the problem is. That rule has been there since the dawn of time.
We can shoot a movie with paranormal activity kind of stuff.
Correct.
Here in your office.
Correct.
But then to release it, we would require any amount of money.
Number of prints, press screenings, publicity on TV, hoardings. The list is endless. And the final battle, even after you've done all this, is you have to get the theaters to give you good show timings, and no one gives you good show timings if you're a small film. So you will get, on paper it will say 100 screens released. If you actually look at the 100 screens and what times of day your film is going to be shown, you'll realize it's a sham, because you've been given the 11 a.m. slot on Monday through Thursday. Who's going to come at 11 a.m. to watch your film? And then they say box office did bogus numbers, because all the movies, all the key windows are the evening show and the night show, and all the important theaters, and you'll never get those slots.
In your most private moments, or when you are looking through your phone or your laptop, what do you read? Like, let's say, what do you read more often?
I read the
any hidden influence, hidden influence on your thought process, or
no. I think as I've grown older, a lot of my things that influence me is just simple everyday life, which I get a lot by traveling. Ever since the advent of Airbnb, my life has changed, because now when I go outside the country and I travel and stuff like that, this has been at least the last 7 years. I don't do the 5 stars. I do Airbnb homes where people are renting a room, not the entire apartment. I have started backpacking. So ironically, there'll be very few of us in our 50s who are backpacking. It's all young people, but in some of the hostels in different places I've stayed, and you get so many ideas, so much stuff, so much you get to embrace. Other than that, the reading that I do is sometimes it depends on what I'm in the mood for. I read fiction. Sometimes I'll just be focused, like the last 3-4 months have just been focused on the writings of Ambedkar. It's as random as that. It just depends on what drives me at a certain point in time, and then that's what I devote my time to. I spend very, very little amount of time on the news, and I virtually don't. Every couple of days I might open the New York Times or something, internet, what's happening in the world. That might happen once a week, a couple of times, otherwise I don't. So
I think we have been given a lot of food for thought, or rather all the food for thought has been exhausted.
I'll tell you one thing which I did many years ago, and I consider it a recipe for happiness. I ask myself why every day I wake up in the morning and I'm in a irritable mood or something like that, and then it hit me. I said, every day, like my dad, I would pick up the newspaper and I would read it. So this was when I was making Door in 2006, and suddenly I realized the cause of my irritation and anger was the newspaper. Back in the day it was a physical thing. So in 2006 December, I stopped newspaper subscription and I switched off my cable. Back in the day there was only cable TV. That's the number one recipe for happiness.
Wow.
After that, guess what? When I wake up in the morning, I read what I want to. Sometimes I just look at my old photo albums, but I read what I want to when I wake up in the morning. Achha, chalo.
This book,
what should I first do? That thought, as opposed to becoming a slave for what others want you to read, and invariably all the stuff in the newspapers is negative. There's very little, the percentage, 80% negative, 20% positive, if that.
Negative bikta hai, like that in the media.
I don't want to start my day. I don't want to start my day like that.
Any social or political change you feel strongly about in the world?
My movies constantly express this, and I have never overtly said it, but I genuinely am naive and innocent, and I believe in the goodness of human beings. I believe in simple things like love. That's why Sufism makes so much sense to me. Things like that. And like that, I'm sorry, I'm quoting from my own film. In Dhanak, the song, which is all I'm saying is, let's give love a chance. That's what I believe in. One of the reasons why I'm not on social media is there's just so much hate that is spread through social media that the message of love is lost, and I would rather be in my own head, be with the few people, but who constantly remind कि अरे दुनिया में अभी बहुत सारा प्यार बाकी है, and इसी में घूमते हैं अपन. So, and I don't want to become a sadhu and give gyan and all that. I want to be a practical man living in today's times with a good bank balance, flying my business class. I don't want to give up all this. But in all of this, there's a space for love. And I think that's what should rule the world.
So I think we have no chance of getting some contemporary controversial statement, and neither was that the intent, but
exactly that I have absolutely no desire, because like I said, I like my happy space and I want to be there.
So very great things we have heard from you, Nagesh. I think what stays in my mind is giving up newspapers to 2006 and sticking to that. It's something, whatever, phenomenal, unbelievable, incredible, and still it makes sense.
It does.